Could you please call the roll?
Alder Kugel. Here. Alder Bernstein.
Here.
Alder Rademacher.
Here.
Alder Holmquist is excused. Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder DePula.
Here.
Mayor Moore.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve?
There's none of those.
Oops, there are no
Oh, there
minutes.
aren't any minutes. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Do we have anybody there to make an appearance this evening?
We do not, Mayor, either online or in person. There are no appearances.
Okay. There is no public hearing, there is no consent agenda. That takes us to council action items, unfinished business. Consideration of ordinance 725, 792, amending chapters 175 and 480. The fees, fines, and penalty schedule regarding building inspection and zoning fees brought forth by the Planning and Community Development Director. This is obviously second read on this item is unfinished business. Does anybody have any additional questions on this item? And if not, I'll take a motion.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Do I have a second? Okay, and I have a second. Any further discussion, questions for Doug this evening? None?
Nope.
Okay. That being the case, this is an ordinance change, so I believe this is a roll call. Could you please call the roll?
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Kugel.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Takes us to item 6, to items in new business, 2A, consideration of resolution 25-8, 2819, approving a memorandum of understanding with firefighters local 311 regarding mandatory overtime from the Finance and Personnel Committee. Believe the chief is there.
He is here. He's coming up right now.
You'd think I
Okay.
could walk faster with these longer legs, but not always the case. Good evening. This is again, an MOU with Local 311 for involuntary overtime assignment. Been working towards this for a couple of years. Sat down with the 311 folks, came up with a framework based on existing mandatory overtime policies in place around the county. Pulled it together with their agreement, sent it to Attorney Cole for his blessing. There was some language added from his office. Sat down again with our local 311 folks. I think we're all in agreement on this. This is for, generally speaking, when I have minimum staffing, overtime available gets sent out to our full-time and LTE staff, and people put in their availability, and it gets assigned based on the contract on year-to-date overtime hours, and then by seniority. This is for occasions where nobody picks it up, and somebody has to still work to staff the ambulance. It's a reverse seniority list, so newest hire is on the top, working our way down through the 9 employees, and then again we try to be as agreeable as possible so everybody does have a pass. So if they absolutely cannot work it, they can take their pass. Everybody gets one until all 9 employees have been gone through. This language mirrors all the affiliates around us. They have the same policy in place. And other than that, I am happy to take questions.
Any questions for the chief?
All approval? Yep.
Is there no mandatory overtime language right now?
Correct.
In the current agreement? Okay. And how often do you foresee it having to be used?
Since I've been here, there's been 10 or 12 instances, and most of those cases I've covered. This is a standard part of the fire and EMS services. It's just taken a little while to hammer out the language and get it in place. It does not happen frequently. Our folks are usually pretty good about picking up when it's needed.
Any other questions for the chief at this juncture?
Mayor, I have a question.
Yeah.
Chief, I just want to double check, there's no changes to the budget?
Correct.
This is strictly
Yeah,
a
this is
change to your internal policy, how you assign mandatory time?
Yeah.
That's all it is, yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. That being the case, once again, this is the first read, so you can expect us to see this on the next agenda, and any questions that you have to the chief between now and the next meeting, certainly feel free to reach out if you have any other questions about this MOU. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
That takes us to 2B, consideration of resolution 25-8-2820, amending the 2025 operating budget to maintain a full-time position in the administration department, brought forth by the Finance and Personnel Committee. And this is started for immediate approval this evening because this is a position that we would very much like to go out and begin advertising for sooner rather than later to fill a real hole that exists in the administration department at this juncture. So I wonder if we might have a motion to suspend the rules and take this out of order.
I will move to suspend the rules and take this out of order.
Second.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. And with that, I believe Lee is still there, correct?
We need to vote on
We just
that.
need to make a vote on the,
I'm sorry.
on order.
All
Yeah,
those in
no
favor say
problem.
aye.
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 Rick's and I. Okay, was that everyone, or did I miss anyone? Okay,
Right.
we're under the rules.
You need
Do
to
I have a
ask,
motion?
ask for the nays, please.
All right, nays?
Yeah.
Ask for nays.
Do we have any nays?
Nay. Teresa.
Teresa? Okay. Thank you. Were there any abstentions? Okay, great. We've suspended the rules. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second. Okay, that provides us with discussion. But Neil, do you want to, or Leah, either one?
Absolutely. I'll start off here. I'll ask Ms. Kimmel to come up here again and answer any detailed questions. Essentially, this kind of got in motion with the departure of Elliot, our court clerk / deputy clerk. We had conducted a successful hiring for that position as is currently structured. Unfortunately, the individual who's doing a nice job for us had some personal things come up and was unable to stay employed in that position. With the turnover essentially that was being experienced in that, and the difficulty in hiring the quality of candidate we were looking for, the municipal judge made a determination to hire a part-time court clerk on there essentially directly, breaking it out away from this position without those job duties, which in consultations with the city attorney is within the judge's purview to do that. However, that leaves us down 50% coverage of staff at the front counter. So basically, this is then bringing that position back. We've done some amending of the budget and kind of identifying certainly the leftover funds from that shared position that was broke out now as a separate one, the remaining part-time funds, plus some detailed essentially allocations of funding that Director Howdecker can break out if there's any questions on that, to essentially make this a full-time deputy clerk position and administrative support. From my standpoint, this position is not only needed to help with front counter coverage as well as telephone coverage, that essentially we do still maintain that an in-person person when someone calls. You generally get a human being. That has been the direction we've tried to maintain from a customer service standpoint. But then the also thing that we're really have an advantage or an opportunity here that I think we have the ability to perhaps provide some administrative support to both our Director of Administrative Services and our city clerk when it comes to things like accounts payable, a backup for our payroll, which we do not have right now in our administrative operations. So if either one of those folks are not available, we are unable to complete those procedures. So we'd like to get this into a point where there's a full-time position in there, essentially that is able to provide support in all of those areas. So we have a rather complicated multiple source list here of how we've pulled this together. Obviously, there's not a lot of extra funds here together, so there is a little bit of some tightening of the belt to make this support. I will make a comment that all of the administrative departments working in City Hall were willing to assist and try to identify a way to fund this, because the general consensus is that it is a requirement to have this level of service at the front counter. So whether it's our utilities, our public works staff, and other operations, planning and zoning, everyone really saw some value in having this position available. So the levy impact immediately is there is no immediate levy impact. As it's defined, we have identified enough other reductions and amendments to other existing systems, about $1,000 to $2,000 at a time, to kind of make this work. And essentially, these would be permanent, though. The idea would be to make this a permanent change in those budgets to have that position be funded as described. So with that, staff is available to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Neil.
I'd like to explain the budget quick, just so everybody knows too. Probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I don't remember exact how many years ago, we used to have a full-time utility billing. We used to have a full-time receptionist and a full-time court clerk. So there was a time where we, budget constraints and everything, we combined basically the court clerk with basically a backup deputy clerk. So we did have actually more FTEs at one time, and then we went from, just going to say 3 down to 2. So now with that extra half FTE, so we end up really going from 3 to 2, now to 2.5 in general. And the part-time person is not a benefit position as far as health insurance. I do think I don't know if they qualify for WRS, but no, they don't get WRS either. So there is that little bit of a savings too. But as far
That's the part-time court clerk?
yeah,
Okay, thanks.
just so everybody knows, the true impact, including the utilities, is I'm just going to round a little bit, but it's $18,500 is what needs to be covered for 2025. It's broken down by the general fund, which would be the clerk's budget, is almost $8,700, which is broken down to legal. So like Bill Cole's office, when they go to court, that legal department. We have a budget we could work with. It's like 72,000 on average. We probably spend 5,000 times 12, which is 60,000. So we have a little bit of wiggle room there. So we took some money out of there. Executive other, we reduced that by 1,000. And then retiree health insurance. We don't have as many people that retired. We're not paying out the health insurance. So we took that remaining balance, the difference from that account. So we still have enough in there to recover our retiree health insurance. The water, sewer, and storm, each of them went up basically $3,300 a piece. Water was reduced, the miscellaneous general expenses. Sewer and storm reduced their repairs, each account. They had $35,000 budgeted in each, the sewer and storm. We do not spend that much over the last 5 years in those accounts, so I felt confident to take it out of those accounts and for the future. So with that, we will cover the impact, and moving forward, the only impact on the 2026 budget will be just any normal salary increases. And this also includes, we don't hire based on this practice, but we do hire, we do put the highest health insurance number in there. So that number could adjust what the actual, in the end, what the actual payout is. Could be lower, but the max would be the 18,500 with the highest health insurance for a family. That's all I have.
Thank you. Leah,
I have a
would you like
question. Could I have a question for Mark before we
okay?
go to Leah? So I understand there's enough, basically truing up the budget for this year, there's enough to cover that 18.5, and I assume that 18.5 will carry over to next year.
Yeah.
But the position is gonna be, how much will the full position cost?
It'll cost more, but when we do the budget, we'll just move what's been spent this year, and we probably could move the whole amount, but it showed an overage. We just take the money out of the 2025 court budget and move it, the difference down to the, swap it down to the clerk. It'll be a zero effect. We'll take the exact amount out of both of them.
But isn't the pay's gonna be more than 18.5 for the full year?
Yeah.
Right?
Right, but the court budget would be a lot less because the pay is gonna be, I mean, I don't know the exact dollar amount, but there's gonna be a lot, there's a big part 50% and lower rates, so I'm gonna move that savings at the end of the year when we do the budget, redo the budget, we'll just, so it zeroes each other out, so what we're moving out of the clerk down.
So you'll be saving, the part-time court clerk is getting paid less per hour, or it's going to cost less than we had budgeted?
Yes, yes. So that savings will go down to, when we do the next year's 26, so the offset will be zero, because really the true effect is the 18.5.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense, but we're just, because it's gonna be a lot lower budget next year. And we just move it to the clerks. So net effect is zero.
Okay, I'll remember that. Probably won't, but.
We'll talk about, you'll see a difference.
Yeah.
Why is this higher and why is this lower?
Yeah, one,
Okay.
yeah.
So Leah, would you like to just,
I have
Say
a
anything?
question. I have a question or a point of clarification. So the position that is being requested used to exist. There used to be a full-time position. Then there was no?
No, I'm sorry. No,
Oh, sorry.
I think you're clarifying what my misunderstanding. So go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm just trying to kind of like, how did we get to where we're at, right? There used to be a full-time position, then there became a vacancy, couldn't find anybody. So the judge says, well, I got this part-time person I'll bring in, right? Okay, the best we can do under the circumstances, better than nothing, part-time. So you do what you gotta do.
Well, sort of. We didn't, that just happened, so we just,
Oh,
we didn't advertise it.
Right,
Yeah.
the judge essentially made a
Yeah.
decision to hire, instead of a combined position
right,
with City Hall, to hire their
a separate,
independent,
independent,
which
okay,
left us without a staff person at City Hall.
okay, all right. So there is no solution where the original intent of that full-time position is ever just, it goes back to the original intent of that one full-time person covers the judge's needs in addition to the original position description,
Yeah.
right?
When we advertised previously, and certainly if Director Kimmel has other feelings, we advertised that previously, and we were very fortunate to find someone who had court clerk experience, was willing to take on the position. Thought we were going to be in pretty smooth sailing, but that was, from my understanding, that was literally the only really qualified candidate that we had for that position. And when they were unable to continue
it.
employment, we
Got
were
it.
kind of back in the situation, which I think caused the judge to panic a little bit too.
Okay.
And be concerned about having an available staff for court operations. So essentially made the decision to hire just a part-time court clerk as a standalone position. But really there was no coordination or consultation with us in terms of how to staff then the rest of City Hall. So we're essentially down a half-time person available for the front counter
Yeah.
and other things in City Hall.
Yeah, and I would just add from my point of view and having discussed with the staff, I mean, there's just no question that City Hall and the front office, especially the front area of City Hall, is a challenge because, as I'm sure everyone knows, people expect to get a real person when they call City Hall, and City Hall is open until 5 o'clock every day, and there's just a lot more there going on. So, and I would, would say that in the absence of having a full-time administrative position, what ends up happening is that staff members who are not in administrative roles, but in director roles or assistant director roles, end up doing a lot of administrative work, which is not the best use of their expertise either. Leah, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Mayor. I think everyone pretty much covered all the pertinent points that I would make here. As the Mayor said, City Hall, the front counter and the phones are on and open Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Right now, we don't have a staff member whose sole job is only to answer the phones and deal with the counter. We have a utility clerk / deputy clerk right now. So if she's on the phone helping someone with their utility account and the phone is ringing, that means another staff member whose job it isn't really to answer phones is answering those phones, interrupting their work, starting and stopping what they're doing a million times to fill that role. So with the 0.5 FTE that we have left for that position, I mean, that would certainly help. But it would still, anytime someone's sick or on vacation or leaves early for the day or whatever, that still means other people are covering that role. So, and, like Neil said, when you call City Hall right now, you get a live person. And I think that is an important thing because I think local government isn't always super intuitive on, I have a question, but I don't know who to talk to about this, and I don't know what department to even ask for. So if we were to have an auto attendant type situation where people could just, hit 1 to get the Public Works Department, I think we'd still just end up having a lot of calls going to the wrong people and sitting in someone's voicemail box. And, I just don't think it would be a great customer service for our residents.
That's one last thing. I don't know if you know the elections years too, and this is probably one of the biggest things. This year we're lucky. This has happened during an odd year because there's only 2 elections. They're usually beginning of the year. This was last year or even next year with the governor's election with the new people. We would have to contract out. There would be no way we'd be able to run an election especially and during the tax time to do taxes, get ready for the spring elections and collect taxes at the same time. So we'd have to figure out a different way. We basically would have to get a temp or somehow figure that out, or Lean would have to be working 60 hours a week or overtime to our utility and billing clerk because we could not get the work done with the situation that we would have. But this year we're lucky because it's an even year and the elections are at the beginning of the year. So it worked out okay.
I would just add to that and especially with Leah's point, I mean, there would be in a situation where we would be forced to either activate the auto attendant at times and very possibly restrict window hours in terms of when staff would be able to staff those hours. So we would be advertising, whatever, either some sort of restriction on there to get available time just for them to complete their job. So again, we're trying to, so we think this is the best solution right this time to go forward without if anything, if it actually worked out right, we could actually enhance our service a little bit in terms of doing it without having an impact on the levy. So
Yeah, I had just a comment. Leah, I'm really glad you started the conversation about an auto attendant, because in my mind, you sort of like, that's where my thoughts were going. I was wondering how many other municipalities have gone that route, and all of us have experiences with that. And I think your point is perfect. You know, government is, you don't always know what department you should be, moved to. And what I'm hearing here is that would be the decision that the staff would have to make. Like if this position weren't filled, it's very likely that an auto attendant would be necessary.
Certainly at times.
Yeah. And if, imagine all of us, it's sometimes difficult enough just to focus on your work that's on your plate without distractions, without always being pulled away from your desk. And I've called City Hall a number of times where even Mark just recently answered the phone. Like, our finance director is answering the phones. Like, what the heck is going on? Right, so. All right, that's all.
I would just point out that this was approved by, recommended by Finance and Personnel this evening. As well, with apologies, since I can't see if somebody has their hand up in the room or another question. Is there any other questions about this?
I don't see anybody, Mayor.
Okay, that being the case, and the amount, then all those in favor, we have a motion on the floor. We suspend, right?
Yep, we'll need a roll call on this one, Mayor.
Lori?
Yep, we'll need a roll call.
Okay, I was thinking the amount was less than 25,000, so we wouldn't, but I'm happy to take a roll call. Please call the roll.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Kugel.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 2C, consideration of resolution 25-8-2821, designating the property at 5903 Winnequa Road a local landmark, brought forward by the Landmarks Commission.
Good evening, Council. So I'll start by just sharing the staff memo. I'll give an overview of the property itself, the landmark process, and the implications of landmark status. The property in question here is 5903 Winnequa Road. It's the C. Wright and Edna S. Thomas house. Miss Erica Fox Gehrig submitted a landmark nomination form for the home. She's not the property owner. And the home was built in 1931. It's the first example of the international style of architecture in Wisconsin, for which the Frostwoods neighborhood is known for. The international style is characterized by clean lines and rectangular forms, flat roofs, and minimal embellishments. And the Thomas house exemplifies this style of architecture. It's been under the ownership of the Thomas family since it was built by Charles Wright and Edna Shepard Thomas. Edna was a notable UW-Madison English professor. And following them, their son Bill and his wife Kathy resided in the home. The late Kathy Thomas, of course, was a prominent Monona figure, having served as alder for 37 years on City Council. Chapter 480-20 of the Code of Ordinances regulates historic preservation and outlines the standards for landmark designation. Either a landmark structure or a site can be nominated. In this case, the structure itself is being nominated. A landmark designation can be placed on any site, natural or improved, that exemplifies or reflects the broad cultural, political, economic, or social history of the nation, state, or community, is associated with the lives of important people or with important events, embodies the distinguishing characteristics of an architectural type inherently valuable for a period of a study of period, style, method of construction, or of indigenous materials or craftsmanship, is representative of the notable work of a master builder, designer, or architect, or exhibits important archaeological or anthropological significance. Upon designation, a landmark is subject to the protections and provisions listed in Chapter 48020. That includes the requirement to obtain a certificate of appropriateness from the Landmarks Commission prior to the approval of any zoning permit or building permit for exterior work or for any other exterior modifications. The need for a certificate of appropriateness issued by the Landmarks Commission prior to demolition of the structure, and the duty to maintain the landmark property in good repair. There are instances in which the Landmarks Commission can grant a variance from those historic preservation standards. And when that is applied for, a public hearing is held, and the Commission makes it that determination, but their determination can be appealed to Council. Variances can be given for economic hardship, for historic design, a design which kind of meets a different period of time, an alternative design, or for when necessary for the public interest. It's important to note that Monona is a certified local government, that we achieved that status in 2018 when the Historic Preservation Ordinance was rewritten. That makes us eligible for Historic Preservation Fund subgrants from the through the state. The state's requirements for certified local governments mandate that local landmark designation does not require property owner consent, and that they cannot opt out of local historic designation. The Thomas House is being nominated for conformance with the first 4 of the designation criteria, and that is because it is associated or exemplifies the cultural, political, economic, or social history of the nation, state, or community, and it's the first of many international styles built in what became the Frostwoods neighborhood, and the first example in the state. It exemplifies the cultural and social history of the Frostwoods neighborhood itself. That it's associated with the lives of important people, for its association with Edna Shepherd Thomas, a notable UW-Madison English professor who was a pioneer in the field of writing instruction. It embodies the distinguishing characteristics of the international style of architecture, and that it is representative of the notable work of a master architect, that being Hamilton Beatty. So the process here, the Landmarks Commission will hold a public hearing and review the landmark nomination once they receive an application, and then they file a report to Council, who has final approval of the landmark designation. There is no appeals process for that determination. So a public hearing was held with the Landmarks Commission on July 15th. At that meeting, 5 residents registered in support, and the Commission unanimously recommended that City Council approve the nomination of the Thomas House as a local landmark. I'll say that the property owner has submitted a land division request to the city planner. That's to combine the existing 3 parcels into 2 via certified survey map. That CSM is being reviewed separately from the landmark designation, and it can be approved administratively if it meets the requirements outlined in Chapter 473 of the Code of Ordinances. So for discussion, this is the first read, no actions needed tonight, but the council should review the nomination form and the supplemental materials provided by Ms. Fox Gehrig, and discuss if the property meets the landmark standards outlined in Chapter 480-20 of the Code of Ordinances. The council can approve with conditions, or deny the landmark designation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Thor. Again, it's hard for me to see hands, but I know that Thor is here to answer any questions you might have this evening.
Yeah, if I could, Nancy, just since I chaired the meeting of the Landmarks Commission, that was, as I think as Thor said, we had to provide a Class 1 notice of that hearing. The owners were notified by certified mail. In addition, I think staff reached out to them by email.
Yep, yeah, we've been in touch with the family.
Right. We did not hear from the family before the meeting. Subsequently, over the weekend, I think, Saturday, maybe Friday, Elizabeth Thomas, Bill and Kathy's daughter, did send an email, I think everybody got that, expressing their opposition, which, as I read it, was basically this would potentially complicate the sale, either making it take longer or get a lower price. So I've been in contact with Kelly Unke, their realtor, and I thought she might appear tonight. She's on vacation, so I assume maybe she'll get on in 2 weeks. I also reached out to Erica Fox Gehrig, who made the application, but I didn't do that until today and did not hear back from her. In terms of the nomination itself, to me, as a very much a layperson, it's a slam dunk. And it's the first, to me, the first international style home, not just in Monona, but in Wisconsin, of a fairly significant architectural trend in that time period, is worthy of recognition as a local landmark.
Thank you, Doug. Other questions?
I had a
Connor?
question. I had a question, Mayor. Thor, thank you for the memo. It was really educational. You mentioned that the person who submitted the application for this property to be a landmark was not the owner of the property. But my question is to you, is that unusual?
This is our first landmark that we've nominated since the 1970s. I
Mhm.
believe our current list of 20-some landmarks were all ratified back in the 1970s and then re-ratified in 2016. So I can't speak to that original process for who made all those nominations, if it was commission led. But the ordinances do allow for anyone, and it doesn't have to be a Monona resident, just anyone to make that nomination.
And I have heard from some who work in the industry that it's almost always a third party that does the nomination. It may not always be that way here, but that's what I have understood. And let's see. It was interesting to me that as you outlined, the chapter 480-20 of the Monona Municipal Code talks about how landmarks can be the structure or landmarks can be the property around the structure. And are we this evening discussing one or both of those?
The structure itself is being nominated, but the way that those two classifications are defined in the ordinance, a landmark site would be something like a native effigy mound would be nominated as a landmark site, and we have done that. But a landmark site is also defined as any parcel or part thereof on which is situated a landmark. So if the home were designated a landmark structure, then the site itself would also become a landmark site. So it's kind of a technicality. So then there would be protections on the site itself, for instance. A zoning permit for the site would then require a certificate of appropriateness to be issued by the Landmarks Commission before that zoning permit could be issued.
I guess that's not in line with my understanding. I'm glad I asked that question. So we are, in a sense, talking about the site. We're not just able to say the structure is the landmark.
The structure, it's, from my understanding, that the structure itself would be the landmark, but then the site itself would also be defined as a landmark site. But it's really the structure that's in question.
Alder, if I could, there's
Please.
actually,
Thank you.
there's some significant, I'll say, confusion in how
Thank
the
you for-
ordinance is written
Yep, yep.
on that. My understanding, I think, I would agree with Thor's analysis that it is primarily for the structure. However, there would be context in terms of, other things could most likely be done on the property and the site in general, as long as it did not impact the structure. So, I mean, the ordinance is not particularly clear the way it is currently written right now, but I think the primary thing that is being up for preservation purposes is the structure itself.
Yeah.
All of the things cited by Thor and by Alderwood are related to the structure, the architecture, those types of things. Those are the key elements.
If I could just add, I think, though, an example where the fact that the site is also part of the landmark is important would be, say it's not the case here, but if there were a detached garage that the homeowner wanted to refurbish, it was old, and, for example, the Schluter farmhouse, they did this with their garage, and when they rebuilt it in a style very similar to the original home, so that it actually, when you look at it from the street, it all looks like it fits together. That kind of thing, if they wanted to, if there were an accessory building or something, that might be looked at in terms of how does it fit with the landmark structure itself, too.
So if I were to vote, not tonight, but when that time comes, would a vote to approve this as a landmark, would that, you also mentioned that there is an interest to divide or to change the divisions of the site. Would landmark status get in the way of the current owner's ability to do that?
Alder, I'll answer that. We have an opinion from Attorney Cole that it is a separate, CSM is a separate issue.
Thank you. I also was reminded today that there are local landmarks, state landmarks, national landmarks, and each of them have different degrees of flexibility, inflexibility. It's certainly possible that this site could be a state or federal landmark without being a local landmark. That might be odd, but it could happen. And Alderwood brought up the house with the detached garage, and I don't know, I don't want to speak in generalities. I think everybody here we're all part of a community, and nobody's trying to get in the way of another person's ability to be happy. I'm just gonna back off on my question. Thank you.
Any other questions for Thor this evening?
I have a question, Mayor. So I know that we don't have history of, landmark designations in Monona and how that process worked, but does anyone have an idea, either in neighboring communities, is it common for the homeowner to not wish for the landmark designation and it still be proposed? To anyone's knowledge.
I'll say something if I can. It really varies from community to community.
Hey, Rick, you want to
Um,
mention your background real quick? Because not everybody
Yeah,
knows.
Good point.
Your
Say
background. Can you mention your background in this? Because not everyone knows.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
and that would be helpful.
Yeah, I have a background in historic preservation. That's my graduate degree is in historic preservation. I worked with the State Historical Society for 30 years. I worked with local landmark commissions around the state. And I will say that it will vary quite a bit from community to community, and that it's actually fairly rare that an owner will be thrilled or appreciative of their house being landmarked. But in some cities like Madison, they don't necessarily take that into account because the ordinance doesn't have a provision for them to do that. And I think our ordinance doesn't really give us a provision to do that. We can overlay kind of a political lens on this, but to my thinking, the ordinance doesn't really give us that as a criteria. So it's really up to each individual, but my understanding is that it's common that owners do not want to be landmarked. It's uncommon that they do want to be landmarked. And larger cities are probably tougher on that than smaller communities. But so it'll vary quite a bit throughout the state. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Alder, I would add to that, that my experience in Sun Prairie and Green Bay, when these couple times this has come up, they are more successful when the owner is cooperative with the landmark in terms of working through and designating status and making sure they fully understand the limitations on, and mostly it's procedural types of things. It's not that it's an absolute can't do anything. It's that there's a process to review those things. And again, I think to Alder Wood's point, to make sure that it is not negatively impacting the structure, the historic nature. So I think it's a perfect world. I think those do line up, but I certainly would agree with Alder Bernstein. I would probably say a majority of the times, if it's an external nomination from someone not who's the property owner, it's very rarely done with compliance, because otherwise the property owner would have done it himself. If they were, in a lot of cases, if they really, most of the time they know they have a historic property. Most of the time, not always. But maybe they don't understand the full extent of the historic nature of the property, which is where sometimes external people would make the nomination and not the individual property owner, which I think is maybe the case here. But I think the property owner probably was largely aware of the home. I think they were pretty proud of the home and probably understood its historic nature with regard to its architecture, I think.
Can I say one other thing? I think very often people fear something because they're not quite sure what it means. And more often than not, they worry about something that isn't really going to happen. I noticed in the letter from Elizabeth, she was worried about would they be able to make interior changes, which I think the landmarks nomination would not prevent at all. It's not subject to interior modifications. The landmarks ordinance is not. And she also mentioned something about the driveway, which I doubt very much that would become an issue under the landmarks ordinance. So I also note that there are tax credits available under state law. So if they were to do something to the exterior, if it was in keeping with the architectural design, they could get up to 25% back as a tax credit, which I think is a significant incentive for them to do something that the Landmarks Commission would approve of.
Do they have to have the landmarks designation to get that tax credit?
Yes.
Nope,
No,
no, they do not.
no, they
But
would need
Well,
to be listed
state.
on the National Register of Historic Places or be a contributing resource in a historic district listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And The Landmarks Commission received a grant last year from the state to nominate the Frostwoods neighborhood as a historic district. That application was just submitted to the state last week. So the state is reviewing it right now. That'll have to be approved by the State Historic Preservation Office and then by the National Park Service. That process will take 6 to 12 months likely before we have a final determination. But this home would be a contributing resource in that historic district.
Regardless of designation.
Regardless of local landmark designation.
Well, as long as it retains the character, as long as it's still a contributing resource.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, pending any modifications that have not been made.
And again, that's just the exterior of the
Right.
home, not anything on the inside can change.
Right, so if I could, just, I think Thor may have covered this to some extent, but I think it bears emphasizing that if you want to make changes to the outside of a landmark structure that are significant alterations, then you have to come to the Landmarks Commission to get a certificate of appropriateness, which can either be approved or not, but it's basically to if somebody's going to do something to the outside, that it's not going to change it so that it's no longer historic. There is also a provision that if someone wants to demolish the property completely, they have to come to the Landmarks Commission. If it's a landmarked property, they would have to come to the Landmarks Commission for that certificate of appropriateness. The ordinance is a little involved on that, but there is a provision for a 6-month period of negotiating. At the end of the day, at least theoretically, the city could refuse a demolition permit, although potentially, well, I'll leave it at that. It's theoretical. So if it's not landmarked, then I assume if you want to tear down your house, you just come and get a demo permit and tear down your house.
Right.
And then I had one more question. I don't think I saw it in there, but is there any consideration or was there any inspection of the property to know like the current state of the building to ensure that in its current state, significant work isn't required to maintain the exterior condition of the house?
That has not been done, and it's not, a provision or a requirement listed in the Historic Preservation Ordinance.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Thor, can you explain the, thinking about the certified local government status that Monona has achieved, which allows us to receive grant dollars from the Federal Historic Preservation Fund. Can you explain to me something in the packet here that says, in order to maintain that status, we cannot allow, can you explain the opt-out element, perhaps? I'll just make that a simple question.
Yeah, so the certified local government status is a federal designation, but it's administered by the states. So each state can implement different requirements for their certified local governments because the federal tax dollars go through the states for distribution. So the Wisconsin Historical Society, as one of the additional criteria to be a Wisconsin certified local government for local landmark designations, a community cannot require property owner approval and cannot allow property owners who have landmark status to voluntarily opt out of that. If the property were sold, for instance, and the new owners didn't want it, we can't just let them opt out voluntarily without additional discussion with the Landmarks Commission. So every year with our CLG status, we have to submit a report to the state, explaining our historic preservation activities for the year, and they review our meeting minutes and agendas to see if we are upholding our historic preservation ordinance. So to maintain that status as a certified local government, we we're beholden to the ordinance we have on the books.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Sorry, I do have one more question. So if this designation goes through, is there any way to remove it in the future, or is it permanent forever?
Yes, it can be rescinded, and one of the paths for that is if the property owner can show that they're unable to get a fair market value when they're attempting to sell the property. If they can demonstrate they've made a good faith effort to find a buyer who's willing to pay fair market value and preserve the house, then they can apply for, to revoke the landmark status. And then it can also just be revoked at any time with an application through the Landmarks Commission, and they'll review again the designation criteria. So if the property no longer meets the designation criteria, then with Landmarks Commission approval, it could be revoked.
Any other questions? There's a hand up, but I don't know who the hand is from. Or perhaps, is there a hand up?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Thank you. Again, it's a small screen. Okay, as
awesome.
with the other items
you.
tonight, of course, and all new business, between now and the next meeting, you're certainly encouraged to reach out with additional questions to city staff related to this item. And I thank you for that. Thank you again, Thor. That takes us to reports of committees, commissions, boards, mayor, city administrator, city attorney, department manager, sustainability efforts, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Again, I can't see the room, but I believe that we start on the Rachel side of the room tonight.
All right. I don't think I have any updates. Parks meets next week.
Yep.
So, yeah, nothing for me.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Patrick?
Not much to update, other than we discussed some budget-related things at public safety, and continue to have discussions in that regard, but nothing really to update.
Thank you. Doug?
Just the MPO meets this Wednesday. We're going to continue. There's one section where we're giving a primer on what the MPO does, because we have a lot of new members on the board. So if you're interested, track down that packet on their website. The materials are in there, or you can attend the hearing meeting. That's it.
Thank you. Teresa?
No meetings, no committee meetings since our last council meeting, but being it's the first of the month, this week is going to be pretty filled, so we've got Public Works coming up this week. We'll be digging into capital budget requests. Community Media is also meeting this week. There was a reschedule because of the anniversary celebration at San Damiano. Sustainability is meeting this week. One of the things we'll be talking about is something I failed to mention last time, which was that the Monona Tree Program is now accepting applications. If you want a tree on your property, go to the city website, look up Monona Tree Program, read all about it. You're going to see some list of trees and some pricing that still is not yet, the new prices have not been updated on the website quite yet. And Transit will meet, not this week, coming up in the next. And that's it.
Thank you. Rick, do you have anything this evening?
Yeah. First, the library has approved its capital budget, and looking forward to the operating budget next. interesting statistic came up with circulation. Over half of our books being checked out are children books, and that number is growing, so that statistic will increase. Recently, the library bought these forward-facing children book stands, so you can see the front of the book as you leaf through them, like you would through albums, if people know what those are. And and so June of 25 was 59% higher than June of 24 when it came to children's books. So the investment in those shelves was, there's a very quick and sizable payout to that. Senior Center, we also approved our capital budget. We have one more meeting scheduled later this month. Well, hopefully we can review our operating budget. And just on a personal level, we've talked about ospreys before, but a neighbor across the street from me has a great horned owl in their backyard that you can hear at night. I think you hear the young screeing, and so that's been a source of entertainment for me when I walk the dog at night. Just a little fun fact about Monona.
Thank you. Aline,
No report.
Neil?
Just a couple of quick updates. Reminder that National Night Out is Tuesday, 8/12, from 5 to 7 p.m. at Winnequa Park. Come on down. Hopefully the streak of good weather continues for that event. It's usually pretty well attended festivities, and it's a good time, so come on down. Also, the Harry Whitehorse International Wood Sculpture Festival is having a community day at Ahuska Park on August 16th. Mayor, you may have some more information on that if you do, but so kind of watch for some more information on that. They're going to have some artists on site and some other types of indigenous art available, so check that out. Come on down. It's kind of a precursor to the 2026 full, like 9-10 day event. They're just kind of doing kind of a kickoff for that event, so check that out if you get a chance. Staff is kind of currently working with city attorney to monitor some short-term rental court challenges that have been going on at the state level, trying to see exactly how that can impact our ordinances as we go forward. There's some possibilities that in terms of the ability to treat owner-occupied versus non-owner-occupied units maybe being challenged or questioned a little bit, as well as the creation of whether or not it's done, which our ordinance is created under our police power ordinance, or I think is where our attorney drafted that ordinance. The Supreme Court has kind of stated that needs to be a zoning ordinance.
Court of Appeals.
Court of Appeals, that's right. We're assuming it's going to get challenged and go all the way up. So again, kind of just trying to track exactly what those challenges end up doing and how that impacts our own ordinances and our ability to enforce those ordinances going forward. We're looking at probably having probably an ad hoc committee for the public safety building to review the final space needs assessment on August 20th. We'll also be having some information, hopefully bringing then some recommendations to council for consideration then in September. We have our comprehensive plan RFP has been issued, and we received 11 proposals. Staff is reviewing them and trying to prioritize and rank them right now. Going to be working with the mayor when she's back on finalizing the actual comprehensive plan committee, as well as establishing the interview team to kind of get that process moving forward. So excited to have, well, we're not excited to have to read 11 proposals. We're excited to have the quality of consultants who did respond. So we have multiple quality proposals to review, and we're going to be selecting those for an interview again, and then eventually bringing that to council here shortly. And then other than that, most departments are just pounding away on their capital budgets and starting their operating budgets. Operating instructions have been issued after consultation with the mayor, and those are in process being made. So I'm anticipating Director Houdeker sending out dates for the committee of the whole to get those on, kind of hold the dates here, probably either, if not this week, shortly thereafter. So now that we know we've got the mayor back after next week, we've got some more options on getting those meetings scheduled. So we'll be reaching out for that shortly. So that's my report, Mayor.
Indeed, thank you. Is there anyone else, either of the chiefs or any other staff in the room that have something they'd like to
Yeah,
report?
well,
They all took off on us, Mayor. We're good.
Oh dear. Well, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I would just to follow up on a few things that Neil said and that were referenced indirectly. Just say that the not only National Night Out this on this coming week, but on the 12th, but on the 14th, I believe Teresa mentioned that there's a beer garden at San Damiano featuring Wheelhouse, a community favorite, and that is specifically to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of WVMO. It's one of 4 different events that WVMO is a part of over across town, since a lot more people than just Monona listen to WVMO. And so they're partnering with a lot of other venues as well and opportunities, but the beer garden specifically to celebrate the 10-year anniversary is on the 14th, beginning at 5 o'clock. It's the last beer garden of San Damiano of the season, and as the city administrator also mentioned, we've had good response to the RFP for comprehensive plan, and in fact, I expect to have the full complement of have had terrific conversations with individuals interested in serving on the comprehensive plan committee, and works closely with Director Plowman and Neil and others to put together a group of people that have land use expertise in particular from a variety of different angles, since much of the comprehensive plan will be about, it is always about land use and subsets of land use, whether it's housing or commercial development, et cetera. And I think that's it for me. I'm looking forward to getting back, and as Neil intimated, I'm not only coming back shortly, but am back for the duration. So, so my plans have shifted quite a bit over the next couple of months, and I expect to be blissfully home. There are no appointments this evening. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
One second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. See you soon.
See you soon, Nancy.